Imagine making it through the big bodybuilding stage against all odds. You are what little boys dream of becoming when they grow up. You are the muscle monster that Flex magazine covers are made of. Yet we've got bad news for you, bro. The gains don't last forever, just like they didn't for these once huge bodybuilders. Number 10. Kevin Levrone. Kevin Levrone is an American professional bodybuilder known for competing in 68 IFBB professional contests and won the 23 pro shows. Levrone wasted no time making his mark in the pro ranks after winning the NPC Nationals in 1991. In his rookie season of 1992, he would score 2 pro wins and place second at the Mr. Olympia to new champion Dorian Yates. The Baltimore, Maryland native took second place 3 more times in his illustrious career, 1995, 2000, and 2002. Between 1992 and 2003, Levrone never placed lower than 6th at the Olympia. In 2016, he came out of retirement at the age of 51 for one last Olympia. He finished tied for 16th. During the press conference at the 2016 Olympia, Levrone managed to coax Cedric McMillan into an impromptu posedown, which fans ate up. Levrone was no doubt in it to win, but he was also having fun during his comeback. In mid-2016, Kevin Levrone announced his return and decided to compete in the Mr. Olympia contest at the age of 51. After that, though, he lost his gains and started playing other sports such as tennis and golf. He also acted in many films and runs an online training platform. Number 9. Bob Paris. Bob Paris was a high-level competitor during the 80s and the era of Lee Haney. By the time Paris was 23 years old, he had won both the NPC National Championships and the IFBB World Championships. Along the way, he also won the Mr. Los Angeles and Mr. Southern California. In a matter of 4 years, Bob Paris went from being a homeless teenager to world champion, becoming one of the most respected and celebrated athletes in the history of bodybuilding. From the early days of his bodybuilding journey, Bob decided to create a physique that exceeded the limitations of the competitive stage, and went on to sculpt a classic physique utilizing intelligent training techniques that became his trademark. He retired from the sport in 1991 and became a civil rights advocate and a fitness author. He wrote Beyond Built, Flawless and Natural Fitness, workout books that are considered among the best in the field. However, it's kind of obvious that he hasn't hit the weights for quite some times because his gains are completely vanished. Number 8. Mustafa Mohammed. The Jordanian-born Austrian was a high-level competitive bodybuilder who first started competing in 1989 and did so for a few years before disappearing for nearly a decade from professional bodybuilding until his return in 2001. He competed frequently up until 2006, when he retired at the age of 38 and focused on running his own gym in Vienna. His best results were a 10th place finish at the 2005 Mr. Olympia, 7th at the 2006 Arnold Classic. His best asset was his juicy thighs and thick chest. His gains didn't last long, as you can see by the photo presented, which was taken around 2009. Number 7. Dorian Yates. England's finest, one of the first mass monsters of today's bodybuilding. You know his story and his accomplishments, no need to do his bio. He was Mr. Olympia 6 times over, ranking among the all-time greats just behind Ronnie Coleman, Lee Haney, and Arnold Schwarzenegger in Mr. Olympia and bodybuilding history. He started competing in 1985 and retired in 1995 when he won Mr. Olympia for the 6th and final time and went out on top. These days he focuses more on spirituality rather than building the body. How does he look these days? Well, not bad for a 50-year-old, but rather small compared to his glory days. Number 6. JeanPierre Fu. Jean-Pierre was one of the mass monsters that started to emerge in bodybuilding during the late 90s. At the height of his powers, he was the type of bodybuilder who turned heads and stole the show at every competition. Everybody in the sport thought that he had the size and character to take his career very far. Unfortunately, a squatting accident brought a sudden and abrupt end to his career. In 2002, he was doing a photo shoot for Flex magazine and started doing a set of very heavy squats with 675 pounds on his back. As he squatted down, he realized he was unable to get up. With the spotter not being close by, the weight came crashing down and he suffered extensive damage to both of his knees and quads. He wanted to continue training and compete one day, but it was simply not meant to be. In the meanwhile, he lost all his gains and retired to live a quiet life away from the sport. Number 5. Kenneth Flex Wheeler. Wheeler is often mentioned as having one of the best physiques in bodybuilding history. In fact, both Arnold Schwarzenegger and Ronnie Coleman have stated that he is the greatest bodybuilder they have ever seen. He looked like something Stan Lee would create to battle the Hulk. A picture-perfect set of six-pack abs, giant symmetrical arms, and tree-trunk thighs. He started competing as an amateur in 1985 with a first-place debut at the Teen America contest, and made his pro debut in 1993 at the Ironman Pro Invitational contest, debuting once again with a first-place finish. He competed fairly regularly during the 90s, always finishing in the top 10 or top 5, with his best result being a two-time runner-up at the Mr. Olympia in 1998 and 99. He called it quits in 2002 due to battling a kidney disease and wanted to focus on his first love, martial arts. His recent pictures show him looking out of shape and being nearly a shell of himself. However, he's said to be planning on making a comeback at the age of 56. Number 4. Chris Cormier. California's finest, Cormier first started competing as a light heavyweight in the NPC Teen Nationals in 1987, finishing at first place. That started a long and rich career of competing at the biggest stages of bodybuilding, including Mr. Olympia. His Wikipedia page states that in the 30 years he was active as a bodybuilder, he competed in 72 IFBB competitions. As those 72, he was a runner-up 12 times, including 6 times at the Arnold Classic. In 2006, he suffered an infection of the spine due to being a bodybuilder for 3 decades. After he recovered from the serious injury, he decided to share his knowledge with all future athletes. As you could imagine, recovering from a spinal surgery came with its own consequences: loss of all gains. Number 3. Paul Dillitt. Dillitt's picture is often used as a meme. Often this picture of his will be photoshopped. However, even without Photoshop, Dillitt looks like a video game final boss. Huge, veiny, and often mean-mugging, he was truly a sight to see. He is probably most famous for freezing on stage at the 1994 Arnold Classic when he suffered a muscle cramp due to severe dehydration. He competed often until retiring in 2006. His best results are 4th place at the 1994 Mr. Olympia and 3rd place at the Arnold Classic. Just like all the other gentlemen on today's list, time hasn't been kind with his gains. Number 2. Tom Prince. Though not as popular as some of the other bodybuilders on today's list, Tom Prince was nevertheless a great competitive bodybuilder during the late 90s and early 2000s, even making it to the big stage at Mr. Olympia. With an off-season weight of 312 pounds and a competitive weight of 230 pounds, Prince was always pushing his body past its limits and reaping great gains as a result. However, during his preparation for the 2003 Night of Champions competition, his kidney shut down and he was forced to retire from bodybuilding. At the end, it was that weight disparity that caused his downfall. Cutting 82 pounds to get down to his competition weight, combined with other factors, eventually caused his kidneys to fail. These days he works with his wife in a property management company managing 82 buildings. Sadly, his physique is nothing like what it used to be, and his massive muscle mass seems to have promptly left the chat. Number 1. Ronnie Coleman. Saving the best for last, we got the 8-time Mr. O title holder and one of the biggest and strongest bodybuilders in modern history, Big Ron. During the early 2000s, he was the supreme ruler of bodybuilding. If you were a professional bodybuilder during that time, your best placing would be runner-up if Ronnie was competing. No one could even come close to his size, symmetry, or strength. He was famous for his 2,000-pound leg press, 200-pound dumbbell chest presses, and 800-pound squats. Ronnie retired from competing in 2007. Placing 4th in his last Mr. Olympia competition. Since then, Coleman has been working on his supplement line, training career, and fixing a few injuries he picked up from all those years of heavy lifting. In 2016, he had an 11-hour-long back surgery and literally had to learn how to walk again. He slowly picked up lifting again, but his monstrous size has severely diminished. That's all for this video, folks. See you another time.